Hello, I'm Tahisha Richards, and welcome to my historical figures presentation. George Washington Carver was an agricultural scientist, American botanist, and inventor. He was also known as the Peanut Man. Carver was born an African American slave in Diamond, Missouri, just before slavery was abolished. So his exact date of birth is unknown, but many believe him to be born around 1864. Some sources say 1861. Carver died on January 5th, 1943, at the Tuskegee Institute. He graduated from Minneapolis High School in Minneapolis, Kansas in 1880. He applied and was initially accepted to Highland College, which is an all-white college, but when they found out that he was black, they withdrew their acceptance. He was encouraged to pursue higher education and was accepted to Iowa State Agricultural School. That's what we now call Iowa State University. Carver was the first African American to graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree. There were some people he stayed with as he went through school, and some odd jobs that he did, farming and other things, and those people really encouraged him to pursue higher education. In 1896, Carver earned his Master of Agricultural degree. Soon after graduating, he received several employment offers. He ultimately accepted a position offered by Booker T. Washington of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. In 1896, he became the Institute's Director of Agricultural Research, and he devoted his time to researching projects that helped Southern agriculture. He really wanted to demonstrate ways that farmers could improve their economic situation. He had a more passive view of racial equality, so he was known as a very quiet man, very mild, small man, and his views to some African Americans seemed more passive, and he seemed more white seemed to be more comfortable with him. And some African Americans had some issues with that at the time. Carver came up with the idea of crop rotation for farmers. This was a huge benefit because it greatly increased their yield and created a surplus for the farmers. With the surplus came a challenge with trying to figure out what they use the surplus for. So eventually, Carver came up with the idea to develop more than 300 food, industrial, and commercial products from peanuts. This includes milk, Worcestershire sauce, punches, cooking oil, salad oil, paper, cosmetics, soaps, wood stains. He also experimented with peanut-based medicines, such as antiseptics and laxatives and goiter medications, which were for your thyroid. Carver became known as the Peanut Man. After appearing before the U.S. House of Representatives on behalf of the peanut industry, which was seeking a tariff protection, his testimony did not begin well. He didn't do so good, but as he described the wide range of products that could be made from peanuts, he was able to convince the committee to approve a high protected tariff for the common legume. George Washington Carver was the first African American to have a national monument dedicated to him. The only others that had a monument dedicated to them before that were presidents. Some of his quotes I found that I really liked were, he was really a people person. He cared about the people. He really wasn't for political. He wasn't about notoriety, political notoriety, or making a statement. He really cared about people. And I think these quotes really represent that. Well, someday I will have to leave this world. And when that day comes, I want to feel that my life has been of some service to my fellow man. One reason I never patent my products is that if I did, it would take so much time, I would get nothing else done. But mainly, I don't want any discoveries to benefit specific favored persons. I think they should be available to all peoples. And finally, education is the key to unlock the golden door of freedom. Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was an American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist. James Mercer Langston Hughes was born on February 1st, 1901 in Joplin, Missouri. He died on May 27th, 1967 at the age of 66 from complications after surgery for a prostate cancer. His parents separated shortly after his birth, and he was raised by his mother and his grandmother. But after his grandmother's death, his mother and he really moved around a lot before they later settled in Cleveland. Now, after high school, he was known after high school and during high school for his writing, and he had a piece published in 1921. Hughes also attended Columbia University in New York from 1921 to 1922. He was discovered by a famous writer, Vachel Lindsay, which really Langston Hughes he saw him, he was a busboy, and decided to put 3 of his poems on Vachel's table that he was bussing, and Vachel was so impressed that he said that he discovered Langston Hughes, this wonderful Negro writer. Hughes traveled extensively. He had gone to Africa, he had gone to other places, and he had in Europe, and he has come back, and he received a scholarship from Lincoln University, and he began attending that school in 1926. Langston Hughes was one of the earliest innovators of the literary art form called jazz poetry. Hughes was part of an artistic movement in the 1920s that celebrated Black life and culture. His literary works helped shape American literature and politics. And Hughes, like many other active in the Harlem Renaissance, had a strong sense of racial pride. His poetry, novels, plays, essays, and all his books promoted equality. It condemned racism and injustice, and celebrated African American culture, humor, and spirituality. Here's a listing of some of his writings. There's so many more. I always encourage people to take a look. Some of his poetry and some of my favorites are I Too, Mother to Son, A Dream Deferred, 50/50, April Rain Song, and many more. And some of his prose is The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, Jazz as Communication, 200 Years of African American Poetry. The next person is Sonia Sotomayor. She is the Supreme Court Justice and lawyer. Sotomayor was born June 25, 1954 in the Bronx, New York. She is the oldest of 2 children. Her parents' names were Juan and Selena Baez Sotomayor, and they were of Puerto Rican descent and moved to New York City to raise their children. She was inspired to become a judge after watching Perry Mason as a child. Sotomayor graduated from Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx in 1972 and entered an Ivy League college, Princeton University. She did poorly on her first midterm exam, and that really kind of shook her, so she became motivated to seek help and take more English and writing classes to improve. She was highly involved with the Puerto Rican groups on campus, including Acción Puertorriqueña and the Third World Center. She said that they provided her with an anchor that she needed to ground herself in that new and different world. She graduated summa cum laude from Princeton in 1976. She entered Yale Graduate School immediate thereafter and graduated with a Juris Doctor in 1979. She passed her bar exam a year later in 1980. She worked as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan, serving as a trial lawyer. And around 1984, she entered private practice. Shortly thereafter, President George W. Bush nominated her for the position of U.S. District Court Judge. She was the court judge of the Southern District of New York City in 1992. She was confirmed unanimously in 1992 in August, and she was the youngest judge to join the court. She also taught law at New York University in 1998 and Columbia University. Sonia Sotomayor was announced as the nominee by President Barack Obama on May 26, 2009, for Supreme Court Justice. Sotomayor became the first Latina Supreme Court Justice in U.S. history. On June 25th, she was one of the 6 justices to uphold a critical component of the 2010 Affordable Care Act, often referred to as Obamacare, in King versus Burwell. She joined several other justices at the Obergefell versus Hodges case that made same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states. In June 2016, Sotomayor made headlines when she expressed opposition for Utah versus Edward Joseph Sharif, Jr. This case involved civil liberties regarding preventing unlawful search and seizure protection by the U.S. Constitution's Fourth Amendment. Sidney Poitier, Bahamian American actor, director, and producer. Sidney Poitier was born 1927 in Miami, Florida, and raised on Cat Island, Bahamas. He returned to the United States as a teenager and served in the medical unit of the military during World War II. Actually, he was born in Miami, Florida, while his parents were on vacation, and he was a preterm baby, and then he went back to the Bahamas with his family, but he later returned. He studied at the American Negro Theater. Actually, initially did not get in because his accent was too thick, and so he waited 6 months, took a lot of different classes and prepped himself, and got accepted the second time around, which was pretty cool. Poitier broke the color barrier in the U.S. movie industry by becoming the first African-American actor to win an Academy Award for Best Actor. He redefined roles for African Americans by rejecting parts that were based on racial stereotypes. He was his first credited film role was playing a black doctor named Dr. Luther Brooks, who treated a bigoted white criminal in No Way Out in 1950. In 2001, Poitier was presented with the Honorary Academy Award for his remarkable accomplishments as an artist and a human being. In 2009, he was awarded the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here are some of his movies. He won an Academy Award for Lilies of the Field. Here are some of his director credits. My favorite was Ghost Dad. Katherine Johnson was a mathematician and NASA employee. She is still alive today. Katherine was born 1927 and 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Her exceptional intelligence with numbers began at a very young age. She began high school at the age of 10. By the age of 18, she graduated from West Virginia State College with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and French. She was selected as one of the first 3 African-American students to enroll in graduate school and the only female. Katherine left graduate school to marry James Goebel and start a family. He later died in 1956. Katherine completed the trajectory analysis for Alan Shepard's Freedom 7 mission in 1961. She is also attributed to the success of John Glenn's Friendship 7 orbital flight. She was the first woman to co-author a research report with one of the group's engineers in 1960. She was a part of the team that launched Apollo 11. She retired in 1986 after 33 years at Langley. In 2015, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you so much for watching, and here are a list of my references.